Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 16th of December 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. Actually, before we get into it, I should note that this is going to be the last refuel that I ever do in this room. There unfortunately will not be a refuel tomorrow because I am moving. I have to pack up my PC and everything. So the next refuel will be on Monday, which will cover Friday, Saturday, and Sunday's worth of news there for you guys. But yeah, look at the room. It's empty. There's nothing left. I took it all out today, and really all that's left is like one monitor in front of me and the camera and the microphone and all that sort of stuff. But straight after I do this video, I'm going to pack all that stuff up too. So just feels weird, feels eerie being in a room that's basically empty because for as long as I've been in here, there's always been stuff around me. I mean, you know, being on camera since episode 1 of the refuel, you can go back and see it was pretty much just the same all the way through, right? And I kept adding more stuff to it, of course, and things like that. So yeah, very excited to get into the new place and get all set up there. And it should be good to go by Monday. And then yeah, there'll be a totally different setup behind me. I think I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I'm going to try and make it look cool, try and make it look homey. But you all have the NFT to remember this kind of room by. You know, the ones that kind of like purchase the NFT, of course. Which I couldn't have asked for anything better, honestly, to immortalize the room here. So yeah, just wanted to give a quick note on that there will be no refuel tomorrow, but the next one will be on Monday, and there also won't be a Daily Gwei newsletter either tomorrow. I've packed up my laptop and everything. I don't even know what box my laptop is in, so I won't even be able to do a newsletter. But yeah, there's a lot to get through, so let's get through it today. So the first thing I wanted to jump into was this tweet from Spencer Noon, who basically put out a chart from Token Terminal, and he captioned it with, "When it comes to making money, ETH is king." Now you can see here, this is protocol revenue as measured by Token Terminal. It doesn't only measure Ethereum and Ethereum-based apps, but it measures other blockchains and things like that as well. And this is, I believe, I don't think it's lifetime revenue. I think it's, I'm not sure what the kind of like time scale is here. 1.2 billion. If I had to kind of like guess what that would be, maybe it's like the volume year to date sort of thing. So it's the volume, the revenue year to date. So without knowing, without kind of like having any other context here, I would say maybe that's it, or maybe, it seems a bit low for year to date, so I'm not sure. But regardless of kind of like what it's measured from, look at how much revenue it is kind of like generated compared to everything else. I mean, I remember back when Axie Infinity was all the rage and people were kind of asking, like, look at the amount of revenue Axie Infinity is generating. It's crazy. It's generating more than Ethereum some days. I'm like, yes, that's fine. That's all well and good. But it's not about the day-to-day revenue, right? It's about the long-term sustainable revenue, of which Ethereum has, Ethereum has the most massive lead here. There is really no second best. And even comparing Ethereum and Axie Infinity probably isn't the right comparison. I would say comparing Ethereum and other layer 1 blockchains would be the right comparison. So, comparing it to something like an Avalanche here, which you can see has 16.8 million compared to ETH's 1.2 billion. So it's not even in the same league. And then you make your way down the list here. You can see Solana's only at 3.2 million. What's next? Is there any other layer 1s? No, just those two there. I'm guessing, Filecoin as well, 2.8 million, but I guess like Filecoin is in a smart contract chain. Helium, also a layer 1. But yeah, they're all kind of like dwarfed by Ethereum's protocol revenue. Now, the thing is about protocol revenue is that it's nuanced, right? It's not all protocol revenue is created equal, because for much of ETH's life, or for most of ETH's life until August 5th, most of that revenue, protocol revenue, the fees being paid, was going to miners. It was not going to anyone, we weren't burning any ETH, so it wasn't coming to holders as kind of like a pseudo dividend or anything like that. It was going straight to miners who would sell it. So it meant really nothing there. But now, most of it, 70-ish%, probably a bit more than that, it gets burned, and then the rest of it goes to miners, and then in the future, it will go to stakers instead. So now Ethereum, ETH is capturing that value that's being generated by the protocol, the revenue that's being generated. And then you can kind of look at some other kind of apps here, like DYDX, for example. Like DYDX token holders don't get that revenue. I believe that goes straight to DYDX, the company, who, they pay the roll-up fees and stuff like that, and they pay other kind of like running costs and things. But I believe that all the trading fees pretty much go to them and the market makers and stuff like that as well, I believe. And then there's other things, like SushiSwap here. That's going to liquidity providers, right? Same as Uniswap. Same as like any AMM. SushiSwap has a bit of it going to, like, I think 0.05% going to Sushi stakers, which actually I believe this is only showing protocol revenue, which means it's probably not showing. I don't think it's showing liquidity provider revenue here. That would make more sense because I figured Sushi would have more than that. So this is just what's gone to the protocol itself. And in some of these protocols, they have a way to stake the native token in order to get a share of that, right? So yeah, I believe that's what's being shown here for these applications. So that's really cool to see. And then you can see the other ones here as well. So I guess the whole point of me showing you guys this is, just to show you the magnitude in difference between, I guess, like ETH's protocol revenue and everything else. It's just, there's not even any comparison here. And I know the high fees on ETH hurt, right? But the thing is, at the end of the day, people are paying and they're willing to pay because they're getting the value out of it. Now, I'm curious to see what layer 2s look like when they start taking off in a big way. I know Arbitrum and Optimism basically hover around $100,000, $150,000 a day worth of protocol revenue. That's going to the sequencer. Optimism is donating some of it as part of their public goods drive. And then, with kind of like Arbitrum, and both Arbitrum and Optimism, they're paying their kind of like fees for layer 1 Ethereum as well. So yeah, it's always nuanced when you kind of look at this stuff, but I'm curious to see how the L2s fare, because obviously they have much more capacity. So their fees aren't going to be, anywhere near as high as ETH L1, and they're hopefully going to get even cheaper over time. So it's more going to be the quantity of the transactions leading to total, the total fee revenue being higher, rather than just a few transactions paying lots and lots of fees. So kind of like the individual fees are high, and the aggregate fees are high. Whereas with kind of rollups, you have individual fees being low, but aggregate fees still being high because of that. So yeah. Anyway, that's a cool little chart there. All right, next up we have Ether Capital Corporation here, which is actually a publicly traded company. I believe this is the first publicly traded company to do this, but they announced today that they have staked over $50 million worth of their ETH, becoming the only public company in the world to stake such a meaningful balance. I believe that to be true. I haven't heard of any other public company staking this much of their own ETH. And then they go into a thread about, why this is a big deal and everything like that. You can give this a read, but I wanted to kind of give my little view here. It's a big deal because, first of all, that's a lot of ETH, right? $50 million worth of ETH is nothing to scoff at. They're a public company. Yes, they're called Ether Capital Corporation. I've known of these kind of like guys for quite a while now. They were buying ETH, for a while. They have a rather large balance of ETH, obviously. But what it does, it kind of like signals that these kind of large holders of ETH are perfectly fine putting it into staking, right? To basically transforming their ETH from just being in cold storage to the internet bond, as the bankless guys like to call it, which makes a lot of sense, right? So right now they're generating obviously around 5% ROI, 5% yield on their ETH, ETH denominated. That's a lot of a lot of money at $50 million worth of ETH staked, right? Well, man, I'm not even going to be able to do the math here. I suck at math. But that's 10%, 5 million. It's a 2.5 million, I guess, like ETH denominated yield, USD denominated a year if ETH price stayed the same. But we all know the ETH price doesn't stay the same, so it could be more or less. But that's a lot of money. That's for kind of like passively just staking here, which is really, really cool. But then on top of that, post-merge, there's going to be like a pretty big bump in yield as well. So, some estimates put it at 20% plus if you account for the unburnt fee revenue and also the MEV. That's a huge yield on ETH, right? Remember, that's an ETH denominated yield. That is not a US dollar denominated yield. And as I've explained before, all the people who staked ETH back in, I guess when the Beacon chain first went live and ETH was around, $700 or something like that. All the people that did that back then, not only have they earned, I think the yields were like pretty high back then, and then it came down to like 5%, but let's just say on average they earned 6%, over the last year. Not only have they earned 6% ETH denominated yield, but ETH has gone up a lot, right? ETH went up from 700 to current price of 4,000 something, whatever it is right now. So that's, average of 6% yield is in real terms, in real dollar terms, is much higher than that. Now, that's not to say, that's guaranteed that a year from now, ETH is going to do a run like that again. Like, equivalent kind of like percentage terms would be a $30,000 ETH or something like that, if I'm doing my math correctly there. I don't think that's going to happen within a year. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm just being too bearish. Me being bearish, that's a funny one. Maybe I am being too bearish there. Maybe it does actually happen because we have the merge coming up and things like that. But let's not get bogged down in the price predictions here. But, those are kind of like the two major reasons why I think it's it's a very big deal. And the third one is basically kind of like just having a big kind of like amount of ETH from a public company support the network, right? They're supporting the network with validators. I'm pretty sure they're validating on their own, or kind of like, I mean, probably not on their own, but they probably kind of like have their own setup, everything like that. They probably have more than just like my little staking box, right? And a bunch of kind of like a professional kind of like setup there in order to secure that $50 million worth of ETH. But it's absolutely crazy. But I love this. I love when big amounts of money do this, because it's always a big deal. Like, it's all well and good for me to say, hey, I've spun up a couple of validators. That's all fun. No one really cares, right? Like, and I'm not doing that for people to care, or I wouldn't say that because I want people to care. But it's not something that moves the needle in terms of like marketing or attention on staking, whereas something like this is. And Ether Capital isn't the only kind of like I guess entity to have staked a lot of ETH. There is a bunch of other kind of entities that have done this as well, whether they be individuals or institutions or kind of like companies or anything like that. But as they mention here, they're the only public company in the world to stake such a meaningful balance, and I believe that to be true. I haven't seen any other things kind of saying anything against this. So yeah, really, really cool to see this. So Immutable announced today that Ecomi, which does a bunch of kind of like NFTs for, licensed NFTs for things like Marvel and DC, has officially moved to Ethereum by moving to the Immutable X Layer 2 system here. So over 3 million NFTs are now 100% carbon neutral and available for gas-free trading via Vivi official here, powered by Immutable X and StarkEx, of course. So this is huge news, obviously. Like, the funny thing is we had the controversy the other day where Ubisoft announced that they were going to do NFTs based on Tezos, and it wasn't the controversy around what blockchain they chose. It was around the fact that a lot of their fans, or maybe not even their fans, a lot of people kind of pushed back on it and said, we don't want you doing NFTs. Like, this is crazy. You're just money hungry, blah, 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 all this stuff. And obviously a lot of it was kind of like just misinformed because people think NFTs are scams. But at the same time, I actually sympathize with some people, because when you kind of look at big gaming companies like Ubisoft and other ones that have been stuffing microtransactions into their games for years now, and loot boxes, and just making gaming into more like video games into something like gambling, like much closer to gambling. When that you see these kind of like companies do NFTs, immediately their existing user base is like, or existing customer base is basically like, well, this is just another way for you guys to suck money out of us. And to be honest, I think it is for a lot of these big companies. Whereas I think for NFTs to really resonate with people from those sorts of kind of companies, it needs to be like a ground up, bottoms up approach where users can kind of like earn these NFTs, and they don't just have to fork over some cash to buy them. And they can actually be truly user-owned and user-generated. But, that's maybe a little bit off topic there. But I think, places like Ecomi, which does kind of like these premium NFTs, as they call them, or licensed NFTs, is probably a better path than just the video game companies shoving NFTs into their games, because there are a lot of people who buy licensed memorabilia and merchandise and things like that for these things. I mean, you can't see it right now, obviously, but you guys know all my figurines and stuff. Some of it's licensed, some of it's not, but that's the same kind of thing there. And I don't feel like I'm enriching some major corporation by doing that or anything like that. I don't feel like I'm getting ripped off or scammed in that kind of sense. Whereas a lot of people with video games, they do, because they've just been kind of like, the money's just been sucked out of them, and they get poorer and poorer quality games. I mean, for me personally, I don't know about anyone else, but a lot of the AAA games these days, the ones made with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of budget, they're just so bad. Like, they don't even innovate. They just kind of like rehash the same thing because they know it's going to sell, because gaming has become such a kind of like huge business now that it's just become commoditized, where it's like, they can basically just reskin everything, re-release the same game every year just with a different title, and people will buy it in droves, and they'll make a shit ton of money off of it. And then they can shove in all these microtransactions and all these kind of like loot boxes and stuff like that, and people will still buy it. So when you kind of like look at it from that perspective, I actually get why gamers would be pissed off about those sorts of things. But I haven't seen the same pushback for something like this, because it's kind of like already expected that, you kind of like fork over money for these licensed kind of things, and you get these things, whether they be physical collectibles or comic books or anything like that. And now you can get the digital version of it. So But still, there's also the kind of like things that people hate about NFTs that are uninformed, like the energy use and stuff like that, like the people thinking just NFTs outright are a scam. There's all those things that persist. But I think when it comes to the gaming community, they are very, very sensitive to these sorts of things around kind of like monetization, and they really are sick of being taken advantage of. And to be honest, I mean, I used to be a pretty heavy gamer. I got sick of it really quickly. Like the fact that mobile gaming just got to a point where it was so bad, where all the games that were like the biggest games were just stuffed full of microtransactions. Like, I'm sure some of you have played these before, where you basically build up your village or your town, and then you kind of like hit a limit where unless you spend money, it takes forever to do anything. Like everything's time gated. And that bled out of mobile gaming into other games, because these video game companies were like, wow, these mobile games are making so much money. Why don't we kind of like take their strategies and put them in our games? And it's just watered down the whole experience. So I actually totally understand why gamers are very sensitive to this sort of stuff. And if I was still a big gamer, I probably would be too. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can blame NFTs for that. I think you just have to blame the company. Like, it's misguided to blame NFTs, because NFT is just a tool, right? It's just something that people can use to achieve something, whatever they want to achieve. Video game companies can do it in a good or bad way. I mean, indie games can do it to raise money to develop their game. Like, they can play it really nicely like that. But AAA game companies, it just feels like a cash grab, right? But anyway, that's a little rant, Dan. Just something that I wanted to talk about when it came to NFTs, because I think when you look at it from that perspective, you can kind of understand why people get annoyed at those sorts of things. And it's not all just kind of like them being misinformed or being uneducated. It's kind of like that historical context behind it that dictates how they feel about it there. But anyway, still really cool news from Immutable here about these are Ecomi NFTs here. I'm curious to see how that plays out over the coming months and how many new people are on boards as well. And speaking of Immutable, they have a fiat on-ramp now live with MoonPay. Now, you can basically make instant credit card purchases of layer 2 ETH with zero gas fees, of course, powered by MoonPay. Now, I checked this out before. Unfortunately, with these kind of like fiat on-ramps, there's so many limitations. The biggest limitations, the two biggest is KYC, and the second one is the fact there's limits on how much you can kind of like purchase at over certain periods of time. I mean, I get why they do that. It's probably not in their hands to do it. They have to follow financial regulations, which, as you guys know, I think most are kind of like total bullshit. But it's a good step forward. Like, it's a good step forward until we have centralized exchanges doing direct onboarding, because those are the real kind of like hubs where people can basically request to get their limits increased and stuff like that, and basically not be limited to maybe even just buying $1,000 of ETH kind of like in one transaction, have to wait like a week or something. And then also, it's funny because the United States, I believe, is kind of like one of the countries MoonPay doesn't actually support either. So it's just, I mean, I say funny, but like not funny in a ha-ha way, just funny in a, oh my God, like, come on, guys. But there wouldn't be that problem if like Coinbase had a direct bridge from their exchange to Immutable, for example. But still, this is cool. This is still really cool. This is still really good for users. It's better than what was available before. But I really just hope that the traditional finance scene with regulations gets a lot better, so that we can have a lot smoother onboarding experience and don't have to have all these limitations, which obviously are pretty crappy at the end of the day. All right, so Coinbase Wallet tweeted out a guide today of how to basically get started with Polygon's POS chain using the Coinbase Wallet. So the Coinbase Wallet is separate to the Coinbase Exchange, of course. You can get it as a web browser extension or as a mobile wallet app. And once you do that, you can actually switch to a bunch of different networks, not only the Polygon POS chain, but I believe they also support Optimism, Phantom, Binance, Avalanche, and Arbitrum as well. So you can see the kind of like list here, which is really cool. So this guy just basically tells newbies how to do that. I mean, I know probably none of you require a guide like this, but the reason why I wanted to highlight it is because this is what we need as well. Not only do we need Coinbase to be supporting L2s from an infrastructure perspective, we also want them to be supporting them via an education perspective, because there are so many people that have absolutely no idea what an L2 is, what scaling solutions are. They have no idea that they kind of like can live on Ethereum and they can do everything they can do on Ethereum with the cheap fees. And that's what Coinbase Wallet in this thread is highlighted here, which I really appreciated. So you can go give this a read if you want. As I said, it's probably not going to be news to you guys because you're more advanced users, but still, this is definitely cool to see. All right, so an update here from Superfluid, which is kind of like team building programmable money streams on Ethereum. They announced today that Superfluid is coming to Optimism and Arbitrum. The testnets are already available at app.superfluid.finance with a built-in faucet for test ETH and tokens. Now, I'm super excited about this for two major reasons. First one, I have said many times before that use cases like streaming payments, donations, kind of like small amounts of commerce, they cannot happen on layer one. They're completely priced out of layer one. They're uneconomical. These things need to get to layer two. Well, here we go. They're on layer two. Like, that's just testnet right now, but I'm sure mainnet is coming soon. They're there. They're working. And kind of like there's users there to use them as well. And the second major reason is because once these kind of like primitives get onboarded to these layer twos, you can start building things off of them. Like, there's plenty of apps that can tap into these programmable money streams, and there's plenty of use cases as well that can tap into this sort of stuff. So once that infrastructure is on there, it just makes everything else a lot faster and a lot easier. You know, I've mentioned before how one of the major infrastructure plays that a lot of apps have to wait for before they can deploy to a chain is the Gnosis Safe multisig, because a lot of teams use that to manage their treasury. They use it to manage the actual application itself and kind of like paying out to contributors and stuff like that. So once that's live, that's kind of like a big supporting infrastructure. And I think that money streaming payments is another one, right? So very, very cool to see this. Very excited about it, as you can hear in my voice. And I mean, I should disclose I'm a small investor in Superfluid, but for the reason of that, I'm excited about it, right? Like, you know, it's always funny when people kind of like say to me, "Oh, you're only talking about it because you're an investor." I'm like, well, I invested because I'm excited about it, right? Like, I wouldn't have invested if I wasn't excited about it. Like, I have plenty of things that I haven't invested in because I just didn't see the value proposition. But for streaming payments, I definitely do. Like, I'm a recipient of streams of payments for various different things out there, and it works really well. You know, on layer one, it obviously doesn't work as well as it once did because of the high gas fees. But at layer two, it's literally going to be amazing. Like, imagine having. So let me give you a use case here, because I want you guys to really be as excited as I am about things like this. Imagine you are getting paid, and you want to get paid more than once a month or once every 2 weeks. You want to get paid continuously, and you want your kind of like money to stream out to you. Say you're getting paid like $5,000 a month for your work, just as a random figure there. Now, let's say divide that by kind of like 4 weeks, and then every week you're going to get like, I don't know, just over $1,000, like $1,250 or something like that. And then imagine being able to automatically from that stream have that direct to a yield farm. So you can be yield farming. You don't have to worry about this, by the way. This can all be automated. So every time kind of like your pay comes in, you can set it up and you can be like, okay, on the first day of every week, take this and deposit it into this yield farm so I can generate a yield on my dollars. And you could do that at any kind of like point in time. You could do it daily if you wanted to. Obviously on layer two, it becomes economical to even do it hourly, right? Because the fees are so cheap. But, you know, it depends on the frequency you want to do it at. So let's say you did it daily. So that means that you're basically capturing the maximum amount of yield that you can with your kind of like pay. You don't have to wait like 2 weeks or a month for your pay to come through before you can start generating a yield on it. And you can even take this a step further where your employer could just pay you in these kind of like things. Like, they can stream out to you the yield bearing tokens to begin with. So they could actually be earning kind of like a yield for themselves or maybe for like the treasury, right? And then they stream it out to you, and then the yield, you get the yield portion of it with your pay, and then you can kind of like withdraw that if you want to, if you want to take it out of crypto and go to fiat. So when you think about it from that perspective, and then you think about all the Legos that can kind of like connect together there, it gets super exciting. Like, that's the kind of stuff that excites me. So that's exactly why I'm excited about something like this, because now by being on Optimism and Arbitrum, all the apps on there can tap into Superfluid and be able to do what I just described and beyond. I mean, what I just described is a very basic use case. You can just kind of put all these Legos together and make some kind of like Frankenstein of a thing that just like delivers incredible amounts of value to the users. So yeah, anyway. Enough about that. A few other updates to get through before I wrap up today's episode. So Balancer Labs announced today the launch of Aave Boosted Pools, which offers increased yields, greater capital efficiency, and deeper liquidity. So basically, the benefits is deploying underutilized liquidity in Aave to earn an additional yield, increased gains from money markets, and cost-efficient wrapping, unwrapping of tokens during a swap. So as they describe here, lending protocols can be expensive to join or exit. Booster pools is a game changer for both traders and liquidity providers looking for deeper liquidity, efficient integrations for liquidity, and higher yield. So you can go read the blog post for a full breakdown of this. They have a cool little video here as well you can watch if you want to. It'll be linked in the YouTube description, of course. But this is cool. Like, Balancer has been quiet for a little while, I believe. They're not really in the news cycle too much. Neither is Aave, to be fair. Like, it's funny how the news cycle tends to kind of like jump from ecosystem to ecosystem, and you don't hear about things for a little while. Then they'll come out with like a big release and everyone will be talking about it. So it was cool to see kind of like Balancer come out with this and kind of like offer this kind of feature to users and increasing kind of like yield on the liquidity as well. And this is another thing that could be coupled with Superfluid, for example, right? You could just do this where essentially you have like money just flowing everywhere. That's why it's called Superfluid, because the whole point is to have money flowing everywhere across kind of like the DeFi ecosystem. So this is another thing that could take advantage of that. So basically, you can try it today. I mean, it's live on mainnet. You can go check it out. But here they describe like, how is this different? Like, how are boosted pools different? What's the actual value prop? And I'll just kind of read it out. They say Curve has pools where all of the pool tokens, DAI, USDC, USDT, etc., remain in Curve, and the A tokens, ADAI, AUSDC, etc., trade in the pool. That pool deposits all of the tokens in Aave, and each swap must go through wrapping and unwrapping, which adds to the gas costs of trades with that pool. Boosted pools are innovative and that they keep a small percentage of the tokens in the pool, so not every swap needs wrapping, unwrapping, making balance of liquidity much more gas efficient while still being capital efficient. So that's kind of like one of the main kind of like use cases there, which is really cool. Obviously, who doesn't want to save on gas fees? And given the way Balance's architecture works, boosted pools are a series of nested pools where each parent pool holds the BBT or Balancer pool tokens of the child pools. Pre-minted BBT combined BPT combined with Balance's architecture of multiple hops allows for a very gas efficient system for swaps, deposits, and withdrawals. So that's kind of like the biggest kind of value prop there is the cost savings, but also the increased yield as well from this. But yeah, I mean, I love seeing this. The funny thing is that you may be thinking, who cares about increased gas savings on layer 1? Like, I'm on layer 2, like whatever. This applies to layer 2, as I've described before. Like, of course it does. On the EVM compatible networks especially, all these improvements and optimizations apply just as much to layer 2 as they do to layer 1. Like, layer 2 isn't free, guys. I mean, optimistic rollups still cost a few dollars to transact on them. So anything we can do to save gas is a net positive. So don't just think that gas savings are a layer 1 thing. They're definitely a layer 2 thing as well. All right, speaking of Aave, Stani put out a tweet today where he said, after testing Aave V3, I am fully in love with L2s. This is awesome signaling for two reasons. One, Aave V3 seems to be coming very soon or deploying very soon. We already know kind of like the details around it. And two, it seems to be coming to L2s quite soon as well. So I'm super pumped for this. I mean, I want to see Aave on Arbitrum and Optimism because money market is kind of like one of the most important apps that needs to be deployed to a chain for it to really take off. And once it is, I think we're going to really see some nice Arbitrum and Optimism adoption because you're going to have the money market, you're going to have the AMMs, and then you're going to have like the yield aggregators and things like that. And there's going to be a lot of people that migrate across for that because they can actually use it instead of being limited. So very, very much looking forward to seeing V3 deployed there. And V3 also comes with a host of its own features as well, which is super exciting. So definitely looking forward to that. So DiversiFi announced today that the DiversiFi platform has successfully upgraded to StarkEx V4. So this upgrade now means all users can enjoy a massive reduction in fees when they onboard onto DiversiFi. So you can see here 100% cost reduction for Polygon onboarding, 42% cost reduction for the first ETH deposit from Ethereum, and 33% cost reduction for any other ERC20 token. Those are pretty big savings, guys. I mean, 42% and 33%, obviously Polygon onboarding is much cheaper because Polygon L1 fees are cheaper, but from ETH L1, 42% cost and reduction on ETH deposits and 33% on any other ERC20 token, that's huge. That's an absolutely huge improvement. So very, very cool to see this from DiversiFi as part of their StarkEx V4 upgrade. If you've been waiting to onboard to them, maybe now's the time, right? Fees are cheap. Fees are cheap in general. I mean, Gwei right now is about 56. I've seen it go down to like 30s recently. So yeah, probably the best time to get onto L2s right about now, that's for sure. All right, finally here, just a shout out to Slingshot who announced their Genesis drop today. So this is called Slingshot 2099, which is they're dropping 10,000 bags of NFT wearables to their users and community. So 10,000 bags, January 2022 on Polygon. So details below here. So you can mix and match between 100 unique wearables for these NFTs, trade on the marketplace, unlock social features in Slingshot, and kind of a bunch of other things here. The reason I highlight this, I don't usually highlight NFT drops, but the reason I highlight this is because they're trying to do something different, Slingshot here, right? People are probably like, oh, when token, when airdrop, when this, when Binance. Whereas Slingshot's like, well, let's just do something cool. Let's do something different. Let's make some NFTs for our community. Let's drop it to them. Let's do some kind of like mix and matching with unique wearables. Let's give our community an identity, right? Because Slingshot has a really cool brand identity. So let's bring the community into that. Let's give them a piece of it. And then maybe a token comes later. I don't know. Who knows, right? But the token doesn't really give the project an identity. A token is just kind of like a stock in a company, really. The company's culture or the app's culture or the DAO's culture is very different to what the token is. So that's why I wanted to kind of highlight this. But just generally, it's just really cool to see more experimentations happening around kind of getting community involved in things as well. All right, so I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So as I said at the start, that's the last refuel in this kind of like study here. So I can't wait to see you guys in the new one. But for now, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week on the other side. Thanks, everyone.